Terry Tucker. What an incredible, incredible man. He had a pain in the bottom of his foot about 12 years ago. He's about my age, and got it looked at. There was a wart, got it removed, got it tested. Come to find out, it was cancerous. It's this form of melanoma, not anything to do related to the sun, but got to get his foot amputated. 2 years later, his leg amputated. He's got cancer in his lungs now. He's got to get treated every 3 weeks, and he's out for a week. But when you talk to him, you won't notice it. He's 6'8", but he's now in a wheelchair, but he's taller than 6'8". Incredible will. He helps now. He was a police officer. He was on the SWAT team. We talk about some negotiation tactics. He wrote a great book where he describes principles. He has a company that talks about motivation, helps with motivation. He helped his daughter's high school with some security issues. This is when it was a dangerous time, and got referred to other areas. He does public speaking now. He's an absolute inspiration. Played basketball at the Citadel. When you're 6'8", you play basketball. Played against Michael Jordan in college. Played against Isaiah Thomas. I don't know how many of you know these names, but I certainly do. His brother's just as tall. His father's just as tall. He worked corporate for Wendy's, and then went to, like I said, police officer. Then he went to go work at a hospital where his father was being treated for cancer. Just an amazing, amazing human being, Terry Tucker. And it makes me happy to know there's more people. There's more. He could have easily just kind of kept us all in, but he feels that he needs to help people. His view on discipline, very, 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 very cool, very different. Just a great conversation with Terry Tucker. Makes me smile just thinking about it. Thanks for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz, and here's my 45-second introduction. After starting my business in the 90s, I started developing poor habits of eating in my diet because of working way too much. Before you know it, I found myself 340 pounds. The doctor told me if I don't lose the weight, I'm not going to see my daughter graduate. Took the next 7 months, lost 130 pounds. People think there's some secret. Ask me, how'd you lose that weight? Like there's some secret. There is no secret. How'd I lose the weight? Just one word: discipline. I've had other successes in life, and I attribute them all to discipline. Now, I'm not the king of discipline, but I believe that it can help all of us. Friends, colleagues convinced me to start a podcast. The podcast mission: how do we better ourselves and society? I talk to interesting people in health, fitness, sport, wellness, business, technology, science, art, and culture. And I eventually ask them how discipline plays a role in their life. Podcast vision: growth through learning from others. Terry Tucker, I'm so happy for your time today. Thank you so much. Why has cancer made you a better human being?
I mean, Joey, it's really, I guess, first of all, thanks for having me on. I'm really looking forward to talking with you. Cancer's made me better because I think it's focused me on what's important in life. When I was younger, I was a college athlete, and then I was a police officer and on a SWAT team, and I was a physical person. And now I've had my left leg amputated. I'm in a wheelchair. And so I think when you can't do what you're good at, you do what's important in life. And I really feel that for the last 12 plus years now, I've been doing what's important in life, and cancer has made me a better human being.
I mean, your priorities have completely shifted. You're still a father, you're still a husband. You just have this inside you that you're dealing with.
Yeah. And it's just one of those things. I have a very rare form of melanoma that has nothing to do with sun exposure. It appeared on the bottom of my foot 12 years ago. And I was told that I would probably be dead in 2 years because they really had nothing to offer me other than surgery in terms of a treatment. And I thought, well, you gave me a death sentence. Maybe I could turn that death sentence into a life sentence. And that's kind of my purpose right now.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story of how you got there. But Terry, you turned it completely around. You started offering your time you're a police officer, like you said, and you were also part of the SWAT team. And so then your daughter was at school, and so you started offering some security services for free at school, and they started recommending you to others because you have a skill. You knew it was valuable to that organization, and you moved it to others. It's remarkable.
Yeah, it sounds like the way you describe it, it's kind of like, Liam Neeson, I have a certain set of skills, if you return my daughter, this will be the end of it. So
a little bit. Yeah, absolutely. Now, let's go back a little bit. So you're 6'8", two brothers, and they're all about the same height. One got drafted by the Cavaliers, I believe, basketball. You played at the Citadel there in Charleston. You played with Isaiah Thomas.
In high school, yeah, we were in the same conference. He went to St. Joe's. I was at Marist, and so yeah, we used to sit together at the all conference banquets and stuff like that. Yeah, pretty cool guy. Went on to Indiana and played for Bobby Knight, won a national championship, and then went on to the Pistons and won a couple NBA championships, and is in the Hall of Fame. So yeah, it
He
was
sure did.
it was great.
Yeah, incredible. And you were a center at 6'8"?
Center in high school, yeah. Forward in
High
college,
school. Forward in college, certainly, right. And you're right-handed?
left-handed, southpaw.
Very interesting. Yeah, do you still shoot basketballs now in the wheelchair?
I don't.
No.
I really, I still have tumors in my lungs, and I'm treated every 3 weeks for those tumors and that. So,
Oh,
cancer's still kind of beating me up. But
mm.
hey, I can do things like this, which is just as fun.
You sure can. It's amazing to me how you got this great saying how I was talking about your brothers, but when if anybody sat behind the 3 of you in church, they couldn't see anything, right?
Yeah, I mean, between us and then my dad was 6'5", so it's 6'8", 6'7", 6'6", and 6'5". And yeah, we used to joke that if you sat behind our family in church growing up, not a prayer's chance you were going to see anything that was going on in front of the church. But our 5'8" mother was really the
Mm,
boss. Didn't matter how big, tall,
I love
strong we
it.
were. Whatever mom said, that's the way it went.
And you also talk about when you first found out that you were having a daughter that you were in a masculine household. You can't imagine what it's going to be like, but you ended up coaching girls high school and really turning it around.
Yeah, I did. I remember when my wife and I went to the OBGYN, and the doctor was like, "Do you want to know the sex of the child?" And we said, "Sure." And she said, "Well, you should buy pink." And I was like, "Oh, no, 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 no. You need to keep it in there till it's done. I have absolutely no idea how to raise a daughter." But, fortunately or unfortunately, our daughter got my height and is six
Mm,
foot three and actually played basketball at the Air Force Academy.
great.
And so she's an officer in the military now, and we are incredibly proud of her. And she and I couldn't be closer. My wife describes her as a little mini me.
Mm. Yeah, I have daughters as well, and I don't know what kind of father I would have been to boys. I don't know. I'll never know, but perhaps just a little too. And I coached high school soccer, my daughters. What do you think the difference is between coaching that level, boys versus girls?
Well, I'll give you a story, and this is a true story. So we're in the middle of a basketball game. It's going on in the court, and I point to one of the girls on the bench, and I'm like, go in for so and so, and she shakes her head in the affirmative, and I get back to watching the game, but out of the corner of my eye, I can see the scorers table, and there's nobody there. So I turn back to her again. I'm like, get in for so and she gives me another affirmative nod of her head, and again, I can see the scores table. Nobody's there. So I turned back to her a third time and I'm like, I need you in the game. Now she's shaking me off like a big league pitcher, with a catcher who doesn't like the signs. Like,
Yeah.
no, no, not doing that. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You're not going in the game. So I bring her to me. And Joey, I mean, literally a game is going on right in front of us,
Yes.
up and
Yes.
down. And I'm like, what's wrong? I need you in the game right now. And all of a sudden the tears
Oh
start
boy.
down the cheeks. And I said, are we really going to have a counseling session here in the middle of a high school basketball game? I said, why don't you want to go in the game? She said, because my friends are in the stands, and if I make a mistake, they'll make fun of me.
Oh
And I
boy.
said, well, what about your responsibility to your teammates? You come out here every day, you work hard and try to improve yourself and your teammates. What about your responsibility to them? And I finally got her sort of to see the light, and I got her
Mm,
to go into the game. But I think that's the difference between boys and girls. I mean, boys don't care. It's like,
right.
coach, can I play? Let's go get in the game and let it happen. Girls play for, not that they're not competitive, they are. And you probably, play coaching soccer, you saw
Mm,
this, but
mm,
girls play for the relationships that they
mm,
develop with other
mm,
girls, and that it's not about winning and losing. It's more about the relationships that they develop with their teammates.
mm. Yeah, through my years, I don't know, combined with my daughters, maybe 10, 12 years, and I did coach boys high school a little bit, but I never saw or maybe just once or twice, girls like maliciously go after somebody, when
Yeah.
something happened. Whereas boys, you see that they get
Yeah.
retaliatory and they go after them, they take them down, and they slide tackle them in soccer, right? They just take them down. But in girls, they're still aggressive. They'll still go after. But
Yes.
I've never seen it in their eyes where I'm going after her right now. It was more like going after the play. Just a very, just different. And the effort is always there. But I also noticed after boys practice, I noticed that they would still play a game, and they would after the coaches were going away, they still kind of girls when practice was over, they just kind of left.
Yeah. I mean, we'd get on the bus. I mean, we'd lose a game like on the road and we'd get on the bus and I would be tearing my hair out. It's like,
Yeah.
what could I have done as a better coach? They're in the back talking, they're having fun and, laughing. I'm thinking, you just lost.
Mm,
That's why winning, losing, not important to them. I'm
mm,
with my buddies, I'm with my
right.
comrades, I'm with my
Right.
teammates, and we're talking about what we're going to do or our boyfriends or what television
Mhm,
show they're watching or
mm.
whatever that ended up being. So just kind of a different dynamic.
And how were the parents, Terry, during that time?
Horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible. I mean, I used to have a parent meeting before the start of the season, and I would say this sort of tongue in cheek, kind of joking, but it would be like, look, if you don't come to my job and tell me how to coach, I won't come to your job and tell you how to be a lawyer or a doctor or a business person or whatever that is. And we would all kind of laugh about it.
Right.
But there were times, I'd call a timeout. I'm like, all right, here's the play we're going to run. Okay, good. Everybody goes out on the floor. And then somebody's dad is in the stands. It's like, Mary, you need to go left. And so I'm like, oh God, please
Wow.
shut up. I
Yeah.
just told Mary what to do. Don't you be confusing her.
Uh,
So I don't know. They all thought that they were, Michael Jordans and knew exactly what to do. And I used to invite them. I'm like, you are more than welcome to come to any practice, and watch how your daughters perform or how they interact with their teammates. I said, I'm more than welcome to come to any practice. Never did I have one parent ever come to practice and watch their kid.
Yeah, I had most of the parents are good, but there was those handful that would just kind of thought they were. And I would have team meetings, with the
Mhm.
parents two or three
Yep.
times a season. And I remember the first or the second one after a couple games, I said, any questions from the parents? And this one parent, the father, raised his hand and said, I think we should capitalize on corner kicks. We're not scoring any goals on corner kicks. We should use this opportunity. It's a great opportunity to score. And I said, this is fantastic, girls. This is great. We are now going to have Mr. Smith come in and coach corner kicks for 15 minutes every practice. This is going to be great. And he just kind of stepped backwards
Yeah.
and never heard from a parent again.
Yes. I mean, athletics can teach young people so much.
Yeah.
How to be part of a team, how to win, how to lose, how to be coachable, how to get along with people you don't necessarily agree with or like. I mean, especially team sports can teach so much. And
Mm.
yet all these helicopter parents that, you can't talk to my kid that way. I'm not demeaning or cussing at your kid or anything like that, but I have certain expectations. And if they don't meet them, I'm going to yell at them on the court. And these parents are, you can't yell at my kid. It's like,
Ah.
well, either then you find a new coach or you find your daughter another sport to play. Either way, it works for me. But like, I got to be able to coach your children. Let me coach them because
Mm.
when they get into adulthood and they go to their jobs, my brother is a high school basketball coach in Chicago and actually coached Michael Jordan's two sons when they were in high school. And he said he's got an assistant coach that works for one of the big eight accounting firms and stuff. And the assistant coach tells the story. So one day I'm at my desk and one of the partners comes in my office and says, "Hey, I'm just making up a name, Mary Smith." It's like, "Oh, she's a new college grad that we just hired, got a lot of promise. Why do you ask?" He said, "Well, because Mary Smith's mother just called me and wanted to know why Mary Smith couldn't be home for Christmas." And my brother's assistant coach is like,
Wow.
"Hey, I'm really sorry about that. I'll call Mary Smith's mom." And the partner was like, "Oh, no. I'll call Mary Smith's mom. I'll let her know that Mary absolutely can be home for Christmas, but she shouldn't come back after the holidays because she
Right.
won't have a job here."
That's the way it is. It's yeah, it's some parents just don't quite get that. When they were younger, 6, 7, 8, one of the girls would dribble and they'd fall. And then she'd kind of look, And the parents, "Oh, you okay?" I said, "Hey, girls, you fall, you get you fall down, you get right back, just like life."
Right.
And then, I mean, certainly if they were hurt, you kind of read it, but they're looking for a response. But you just kind of got to keep them moving on. In your website, you have your values, Terry: character, courage, and humility. How did you arrive to these three?
I just think those are incredibly important things in life. Character, doing the right thing at the right time for the right reason in the right way is just, I mean, I'll give you another story. When I started out at Wendy's International, the
Mm,
hamburger chain, in their marketing department was my first job. And then I went to work for a hospital. But I remember I had a job interview with a packaged goods company in between that. And I interviewed with the senior vice president of marketing. And we spent 90 minutes, an hour and a half in this interview. And Joey, he spent the entire time asking me questions about, what was it like growing up? What was it like, in middle school and high school and playing basketball? What was it like in college? And at the end of the interview, I said to him, I said, I got to ask you, you didn't ask me one question about marketing, one question
mm,
about
mm,
business, one question about my interaction with the team. I said, why was that? He said, well, I got plenty of people that'll tell me whether you're a good fit for the team. Incidentally, I wasn't offered the job. And he said, but I want to hire people of good character,
mm,
people, who have values. And I believe values and character are developed in the first 20 years of your life. And that's why I asked you,
mm,
what it was like growing up and things like that. And the other thing he said to me, and I think this was real interesting, he said, and I believe character is caught, it's not taught. So you're not
mm,
going to read a book and say, I'm a person of good character. You're going to watch somebody handle a situation and say, boy, I really like the way she handled that. Or no, I don't think he handled that situation very well at all. And that develops your character. But character, values, humility, all things that I fail miserably a lot, but all things I strive to get better at every day.
Character is caught, not taught. It's very interesting.
Yeah. And then, I agreed with them. I'm like, yeah, it is. I'm not, you're not going to read a book on leadership or character and say, oh, now I'm a great leader. I'm a person of great character. No, you're going to watch how people handle things or how you handle things. Like, man, I really blew that. I shouldn't have
Mm.
said that, or I shouldn't have done that. That's sort of that self-actualization. Did I get what do I understand what just happened here? Or did I just totally miss the lesson?
Hmm. Yeah, I heard you talk about you got your Wendy's, you're at marketing, and they made you go to the store and actually flip burgers for a week every year, which is really cool. Kind of
Yeah, it was.
humbles you.
It was a
Yeah,
lot of fun. I mean, I remember I was in the store one day, and I was making the sandwiches, making the hamburgers, and I reached up and I grabbed a pack of buns, and Joey, they were like hard as a rock,
whoa.
and I threw the whole package in the garbage, and the manager came screaming over like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Feel those buns." I said, "There's no way I would serve a hamburger on those buns. They're like bricks." And he felt them, and he's like, "Yeah, okay, yeah, you're right." But it's
Hmm,
understanding how operations work, how that whole process works, because we had to know that we were in new product. I was in new product marketing at the time, and if we wanted to introduce a new product, where would the equipment go? Would there be
mm,
room on the menu board? How would we store the product? How would we serve the product? I mean, there were times we would do a test in a market, and I would fly to that market, and I would literally just rent a car and go around to different restaurants. Did they suggestively sell the product? Was it displayed properly on the menu board? And I would order the product, and how did it look?
hmm.
And things like that. And were we doing it correctly? And I mean, the funnest time I ever had, or the most fun I ever had, was when I went to New York, and we were testing hot dogs, and we ended up not putting them into the stores, but there was I spent 2 days on a photo shoot for a hot dog.
Wow.
I mean, that's how perfect. I mean, they would roll a napkin in the bottom of the bun to get the hot dog to sit up higher in the bun. They would
Hmm,
coat the top of the bun with like an oil so that there was a sheen to it. I mean, I never. It was so cool to learn
amazing.
just sort of how food was prepared to do just a shoot. And we had. I'm trying to remember. We had like 3 cases of hot dog buns just for this one shoot. that we
Wow.
had flown in and so many hot dogs and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I actually talked to an actor who was in one of the food commercials, and they're like, nobody can ever eat any of that food. It's inedible because it's all
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
You see them kinda chewing, but you'll notice they don't that it's not yeah, they're
No,
not eating it.
but you
Yeah.
would sit there. I mean, I would sit there for 3 or 4 hours, and then they would, hey, come here. Is this okay? Is it displayed properly to take the photo? Because you can't misrepresent your product.
Right.
But that would, it's like, and I would look at, well, no, you can't do that, or yeah, it looks fine. Go ahead and shoot it. I mean,
Hmm,
that was you know, my big contribution to a photo shoot. So
incredible. But then a big departure, Terry, you said you went to work for a hospital, but you went to work for the hospital that your father was being treated for cancer.
my father and my grandmother, yeah.
That's right. Big shift.
It was, but I wanted. They got such great care at that hospital that I wanted to be part of that,
Hmm.
and that was really the impetus for going there. And I used they were starting a new program development process at the hospital, and so I used my basically background in new product marketing to help people do the is this financially viable, what's the marketing look like, who's the target market, all that kind of pull all that together and then recommend it to the administration, the board, whoever it needed to be to go forward with the product or not to go forward with the product.
Hmm. What is that? So do you do focus groups?
We did at Wendy's. We did a lot of focus groups at Wendy's, not so much at the hospital.
Mm.
Um, it was more kind of, and I'm trying to remember. I mean, we did stuff with speech therapy. We did stuff with dietetics. We did stuff with pulmonary and stuff. I mean, just hey, this is a new piece of equipment that's coming on the market. Well, can we monetize that? Is that something that we can, is it a test we can offer? Is it that kind of thing? So you had a it was more of a coordination. Can I bring finance in? Can I bring operations in? Can I bring marketing in? Let's get together. Does this make sense? Are we recommending it? Are we not recommending it? So
Mm.
it was a lot of fun. I learned a lot.
Yeah, you have this what would seem just eternal kind of curiosity,
Yeah.
Terry, and I love it. Yeah, I think you said your daughter got you like some master classes or that you could take courses on.
Yeah, she got my wife and I both the subscription, the master class, and
Yeah.
it's just something I love. It's like, oh, I don't know anything about physics. I mean, I took it in high school. I was terrible at it, but hey,
Mm.
let me take this master class in physics and see what I can learn and
Mm.
things like that. So
So you're a cop at in police officer, excuse me, in Cincinnati
that's
for
fine.
yeah for 10 years, which is got its own. But then you were in the SWAT team, and I heard you tell two stories of this one guy who just wanted a beer.
Yeah, I was a hostage negotiator,
Yeah.
and so it was a barricaded subject. And Joey, I'm really going to date myself, but we carried pagers back then,
Right.
and pager goes off, gives me the location. I get to the scene, talking to the uniform officers, and I'm like, "What's the deal?" It's like, "Well, he's drunk. He's barricaded himself in his house with his wife as a hostage, and he's got a gun." I'm like, "Okay, do you have him on the phone?" They're like, "Yeah, we do." I said, "Well, let me talk to him." So we start talking, and Joey, it's usually hours, like
Right.
4, 5, 6 hours into a negotiation before you start talk about solutions. But I just had a gut feel with this guy, and so I said to him, "What would it take for you to let your wife go and for you to come out?" And there was this long pause, and then he says, "Give me a beer." And I was like, I said, "If I gave you a beer, do I have your word you would let your wife go and you would come out?" And he said, "Do I have your word I could drink it?" I
Hmm.
said, "Absolutely, you have my word you could drink it, but do I have your word?" Because this is all about trust. And he said, "Yeah, I'll let my wife go and I'll come out." So I gave $5 to one of the uniform officers just to go down to the store, buy a beer. And the tactical team put it on the front porch. I call him back. I'm like, "Your beer's on the front porch, but you don't get it till your wife comes out until you come out." And again, he hit me up with, "Do I have your word I can drink it?" I said, "You absolutely have my word you can drink it." So his front door comes open. His wife comes out with her hands up. He comes out with his hands up. We handcuff him, let him drink his beer, and off to jail he went.
Did he specify the brand?
He did not. He just said, "Give me a beer." So he
It's
wasn't too particular at the time.
I guess not. It's amazing that you say you got to develop trust with these people because I heard you tell another story. They're typically asking, "Promise me I can't go to jail," and you can't do that, obviously.
Yeah, we never lied to people.
Right.
People would say to us exactly that. Hey, I'll come out, or I'll put the gun down. I'll let the hostage go, but you got to promise me I'm not going to go to jail.
Mm.
We would have to say, I'm sorry, when you do come out, you are going to go to jail. And then we would try to deflect the conversation to something more poignant, more palatable for them. And the reason we did that was because, and this happened several times, whatever the underlying cause that made them do what they did, a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, say it was their mother, say their mother was pushing their buttons and they got so infuriated that they grabbed the gun and barricaded themselves in their room. Well,
Mm.
mom's still around, mom's still pushing their buttons. And 3 years from now, they do the exact same thing and we're right back negotiating with them.
Mm.
And if they ever felt that we lied to them, then that whole trust factor went out the window and you were going to have to bring another negotiator in to basically start from ground zero, start all over again to try to get them out again. So we just never lied to people because we didn't want to blow that trust factor. And
Mm.
negotiating was all about trust. I mean,
Uh-huh.
it's just like a relationship with a parent or a child or a husband and wife or a boss and a subordinate. If you don't have trust, you don't have a good relationship.
Hmm. I mean, and that goes with any relationship.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, the thing about honesty is that I know I've heard this many places, but it's the easiest to remember. So if you're honest with somebody, what really happened, you can really retain that and give it back. You wrote a book, Terry, Sustainable Excellence, where you have like these 10 principles for leading an extraordinary life. What do you want the reader to come away with?
Sustainable excellence, I always felt was sort of a book about here are 10 things that I think if you do or you incorporate in your life, it will lead you towards success, however you define that word in your life. And there's certainly things that I've learned that I've done, and even things that I'm not proud of. Each chapter is a principle. And one of the chapters is entitled Most People Think with Their Fears and Their Insecurities instead of using their minds. And Joey, I know I've done that in my life. I know I've wanted to
Mm,
start something and you sort of pull back and you're like, ooh, wait a minute. Maybe I don't have enough information, or maybe I'm not smart enough, or what will people think about me if I fail?
mm,
That's thinking with our fears and our insecurities. That's not thinking with our minds. And especially if I get an opportunity to speak to young people, I always tell them if there's something in your heart, something in your soul that you believe you're supposed to do, but it scares you,
mm,
go ahead and do it.
mm,
Because at the end of your life, the things you're going to regret are not going to be those things you did. They're going to be those things you didn't do. But then
mm.
it's going to be too late to go back and do them.
How did you arrive at just 10? Did you have more? Did you have less?
Um, it was really, I had a young man reach out to me from college and he said, what do you think are the most important things that I should learn, not to just be successful in my job or in business,
Mm,
but to be successful in life? And I didn't want to give him the, get up early, work hard, help
right.
others. So I literally would walk around with sort of a pad and paper. And as things would come to me, or as I would read things or think about things, I would write them down. And 10 just is the number that I came up with. I mean, it
Mm.
could have been 12, it could have been 5, I guess, but 10 just seemed to work for me.
Did you find that some of them kind of blended in with each other and you kind of combined some, or were they very distinctful
I
when you
thought they were very distinct.
yeah.
That this is different from that, and here's a story behind it. And somebody told me once, never make a point without telling a story, and never tell a story without making a point. So
Mm,
it was, here's the principle, but let me give you some stories behind it so that you can understand that principle, you can remember it. It's like if I told you 5 things, you might remember one or two,
right.
but if I told you 5 things and I told you a story about each of those 5 things, there's probably a greater chance you would remember that. So it's literally, here's the principle, and here are some stories that basically take you back to what that principle means or how to incorporate it.
I heard you talk about the 10 commandments. You feel the most important is love thy neighbor. That's probably one of the principles as well.
Yeah, I used to people used to ask me, are any of the principles more important than the other? And I used to say no. But the very last principle is love is the most important word in any language. And when I was growing up, I was a big fan of John Wooden, who was the basketball coach at
Mm.
UCLA. And I had, I read everything, every Sports Illustrated article, every, sporting news article on Wooden. I watched his interviews. And I remember one day I was watching the interview, he was being interviewed by a sports reporter, and I had a pad of paper, that pencil, and I'm like, all right, and I was probably 12 or 13 years old. And, all right, coach, come on, give me some good X's and O's, something I can use on the court. And the reporter asked Wooden, what's the most important thing you want your players to learn or to understand being part of your basketball program? And I'm on the edge of my seat. I'm like, okay, come on, give me something good, coach. And he said, I want my players to understand the importance of love. And I was like, no, love, are you kidding me? What? No, that has nothing to do with anything. Come on,
Trying to
coach.
box out, post up. You
Yeah,
want to hear?
exactly. That's what I was looking for. And he's like, no, I want my players to understand the importance of loving what they do, of loving their teammates, of loving their family. And, now as a man, I get that. I totally understand it. As a kid, I didn't understand it at
Mm,
all. But
mm.
I think that was so important. That love. And guys, we don't talk about love.
Right.
That's it's not macho to talk about love, but love really is, whether it's loving what you do, loving your family, loving your friends. That's what life is really all about.
I remember hearing an interview once with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar about Wooden, and he said the first practice they took off their sneakers and he showed them all how to tie their sneakers. They
Yeah, and
spent
put
the
their
whole
socks on too, I
yeah,
believe.
put their socks in, yeah, because if
Yeah,
you don't do that, you're gonna get blisters and
right.
you won't be able to play, and so they spent the first practice learning how to tie their sneakers.
Yeah, yeah. Attention to detail.
Yeah, John Wooden.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. You just hear story upon story about that, and my it's just yeah, boy, when you talk about John Wooden, that's something. And so, do you have another book in you, Terry? Is it going to go beyond the 10?
So I actually wrote a chapter in a book that got published in December of last year. It's more about cancer. I am literally wrapping up a second book. When I wrote Sustainable Excellence, like I said, it's a book about success. And I wanted to write, even when I finished that book, I knew I wanted to write another book also about another word that started with the word S, with the letter S, and that word was significance.
Hmm.
Success is what we do for ourselves, significance is what we do for other people. I mean, don't get me wrong, I think you can be both. I think you can be successful and significant in life. But I always knew, because, my parents, I go back to my parents. My parents taught my brothers and I the importance of family, of loving each other, of caring for each other, of supporting each other. And I just think that's such an important thing in life. How can you be of service? How can you be significant positively in other people's lives? And this is another book about, here are a bunch of stories about how people can be significant.
Yeah, like you said, when you tell a story, people remember stories. I don't. Who's this said when they're talking about public speaking? It doesn't matter what you said; it's how you make them feel.
Yeah. Yeah, Maya Angelou had that quote. People don't remember what you
Right.
say or
Right.
what you do. They remember how you make them feel.
And when you speak now, because you do a lot of public speaking, is that something you try to ring true?
Yeah, I do. I mean,
Mhm.
I I don't know everything, but I've learned some things during
Yeah.
certainly my life, my 12 years of battling, cancer and things like that I just like to offer to people. It's like, look, here I've learned some stuff. If it works for you, then by all means take it. Incorporate it into your life. If it doesn't work for you, that's fine as well. But it's just I want you to understand the importance of significance. I mean, Joy, I don't know how you feel, but I've seen so many people in my life that kind of feel like they're born empty. And
Mm.
that, when they get out of school and get into life, whatever that looks like for them, that then their job is to fill their empty self up. I've got to make the most money and I've got to live in the nicest house and drive the nicest car and have all the latest gadgets and gizmos. And what I found is it's just the opposite.
Hmm.
We're not born empty. We're born full with everything we need to be successful in life already inside us. We just need to find it, pull it out and use it for our benefit. So our job in life, I think, should not be to fill ourselves up. Our job in life should be to empty ourselves out with
Hmm.
our unique gifts and talents, certainly for the betterment of ourselves, but also for the betterment of our family, our friends, our communities, and our countries. And I think when you make that shift, when you change that paradigm, at least for me, life takes on a whole different meaning.
It sure does. You know, in business, we have these peer groups, and so I've facilitated a few groups, and then generally, if I'm ever asked advice, either business or private, I always say, "Look, I'm I'm not good enough to give advice, but here is a situation that was kind of similar to that. This is how I handled it. I think I handled it well. I don't, and I'll give you this. That's the best I can do." I think all too often, people are really kind of ready to kind of give advice when and then the other problem is, of course, when people take advice, there's pressure on it. Should I follow it? Is it just, it's a very, very tough circle to kind of get out of the whole advice business.
It is, but we seem, I'm going to give this person advice. I think it's better if we sort of, instead of telling you what to do, you're going to benefit more if maybe I can ask certain questions
Mm,
that will get you to figure out the answer for yourself.
that's good for you.
That's much better than me saying, "Oh, here, do this."
Right.
No, let me ask you some questions. And now what do you think you should do?
Mm.
And one of the things when we were hostage negotiators, we would use how and what questions. We stayed away from why questions because
Ah,
why questions sound accusatory. If I
right.
said, "Hey, Joey, why'd you wear that shirt today?" "Ooh, wait a
Mm,
minute. Does Terry not like the shirt? Does he not
mm,
think I should have worn it?" I can get to the same answer by saying, "Hey, Joey, what made you decide to wear that shirt today?" It's a little less
interesting.
intrusive of a question that allows me to get to the same answer.
Hmm. It's amazing how we can bring these work examples just to everyday life. They really translate very well. Where does your spirituality fit in your life, Terry?
I always talk about the three things that have gotten me through my life, my cancer, my dad's death, everything was my three F's: faith, family, and friends. I have a very strong faith in God. I remember when I had my leg amputated and I found out I had these tumors in my lungs. About 6 months later, my oncologist showed me my CAT scan. And Joey, I don't know how to read a CAT scan. I mean,
Right.
I don't have any medical background, but you could kind of look at it and be like, huh, well, that sure doesn't look like it belongs there. I had these
Mm.
big tumors in my lungs. I had fluid all around the pleural spaces in my lungs. I was coughing up green, bloody phlegm. And I remember looking at those and looking at my doctor and saying, how was I alive?
Mm.
And I will never forget this. He put his head down, he shook his head no, and then he looked up at me and he said, I don't know
Mm.
because you shouldn't have been.
Mm.
And I mean, that to me was like, you know what? God's not done with me yet.
Mm.
When I die, where I die, how I die, way above my pay grade. Don't spend a lot of time worrying about the dying. I love the Stoic philosophy. They used to talk about what was called memento mori, which meant remember death, remember that you're going to die. And I think that focuses when you face your mortality and you come through it, it's almost like, okay, you know what? I'm going to die someday. You're going to die. We're all going to die someday. But you know what? That's not really what's important. We all get that once. What's important is how we live, how we
Mm.
interact with people. I had one of my nurses who takes care of me when I get my infusion therapy, who used to be a hospice nurse. And for those of your audience who don't know about hospice, it's people who take care of others at the end of their life, end of life care. And she gave me a book to read. And the book was called, excuse me, Imagine Heaven. And it's a book about people who have near death experiences. And I learned a lot from the book. But one of the big takeaways was no matter who the person having the near death experience saw during their experience, whether it was God or a saint or an angel or a friend or a relative, almost everybody got asked one question: how do you care for my people? In other words, how do we treat each other? I mean, 100 years from now, nobody's going to remember that I was even here.
Hmm.
But what I'd like to be remembered for are the connections, the relationships that I had with other people. I love going deep with people. There's a professor at the University of Chicago, a psychology professor, who does this experiment with his students, but also himself. He goes out and he gets on a bus. And in three questions, he wants to be deep with somebody. So,
Hmm.
you sit down next to somebody on a bus. It's like, hey, how's it going? Oh, it's going fine. How are you? Good. One question. Second question. What do you do for a living? And I'm just making this up. I'm a doctor. Two questions. Third question. Have you always wanted to be a doctor? No, I wanted to be a vet. I grew up on a farm and XYZ. Or, yeah, my dad was always a doctor and I knew I was going to. Now
Hmm,
you're deep with somebody.
hmm.
And social media allows us to stay on the surface.
Yeah.
We don't get deep with people.
Yeah, that is a shame. Terry, has there been anything in recent history, within the last month or so, that you completely changed your mind on?
That's a great question. Um, that I've changed my mind on.
I think all too often, especially now in this kind of polarizing era, people kind of, ground in and they say, "Yeah, I'm staying here with this stance." And I like to think that I change my mind on any given subject, given new evidence. I just wonder if there's anything in recent memory where you've changed your mind on a particular issue, stance, position.
I can't think of anything, but I always kind of feel like you that I'm
Mm,
open to hearing things. Again, I'll go back to being a hostage negotiator. One of the things that we used to do, especially when you arrive on scene and have absolutely no idea why this person has done what
mm,
they've done,
mm,
is to what we used to call tactical empathy. I think you can
mm,
get rid of the word tactical and just talk about empathy. So it would be, something like, hey, Joey, help me to understand why we're here today. And the
mm,
important word there is understand. I mean,
mm,
if you were a homicide suspect that just killed three people, I wasn't going to agree with you,
mm,
but that understanding. And that's where I think, we're yelling and screaming at each other today, and when you're yelling at me and I'm yelling at you, neither one of us can understand what the other person is saying or trying to get across. If we could just be quiet and listen and help me to understand where you're coming from. I may not agree with you, and that's okay. That's what makes us all unique and different. But we've gotten to a point, I think, in this country and maybe just in the West in general, where if you don't agree with everything that I believe, somehow
mm.
you become a bad person.
Your enemy, yeah.
Yeah, and that's not the case. I love people, even people that I don't agree with. I mean, that's not really an answer to your question, but I like to think I'm open enough that if somebody were to say something that, oh, I've never thought about that before,
Mm.
I would certainly be willing to entertain possibly changing my opinion on it.
Can you imagine if one of our leaders, political, wherever, said, "Wow, that's a really good point. I may change my mind on that." I mean, we just never hear that. But yeah, just being open to that kind of thing. And by the way, good people can disagree.
Absolutely. I mean, and do every day.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, yeah,
I mean, the New York Knicks are the greatest basketball team in history.
I loved Willis Reed, Dave the Butcher, Bill Bradley. I love those guys.
Me too.
Yeah, I
Alright,
absolutely.
alright. So
Now
there's
the
my
Celtics
stance.
may have given them a run for their money, but hey,
Of course. I mean, there's my stance, but there's gonna be plenty of opposition there, and that's my point. I guess so if we wanna relate it to sports, something that we can all agree to disagree on, I'm a Yankee fan, I'm a Knicks fan. I mean, you're in Colorado now, but you're originally from Ohio. What's your pro team?
the Bulls. I was
Ah,
born and raised in
Chicago.
Chicago,
That's right, you're
so
a Chicago guy.
I mean, and I played against Michael Jordan when I was in college. So
That's right, yeah. What was that like?
um, nothing like what he was. I mean,
Right.
it was my senior year. It was his freshman year. And so he really, James Worthy was really the big
Right.
gun on North Carolina
Right,
at
North
the time.
Carolina, yeah.
Yeah, but it was also 1982, the year that North Carolina would go on to win the national championship, which we
Wow.
didn't know when we played them. And then it was funny because the following night we played North Carolina State and Jim Valvano's team, which the next year, 1983, they would go on to win the national
Wow.
championship. So without knowing it, in the course of one weekend, we got to play against two national championship
Amazing,
teams.
amazing.
Yeah,
And this is when you were at the Citadel.
correct.
Yeah, which at the time was all male, but now it's co-ed, correct?
Oh, it was all male. Yeah.
Yeah.
I always say I graduated from college, but I sort of survived the Citadel.
And of course, Michael Jordan would still wear his, like, North Carolina shorts under his bull shorts, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my brother tells a great story, when he was coaching Jordan's kids. He said I was in the middle of practice and I was teaching the kids a drill and I look up and nobody's paying attention to me. So I
Mm.
looked where the kids were looking, and it was over at the door to come into the gym. And Michael Jordan had come into the gym as a dad, to take his kids home after practice. And my brother looked at him and said, "Hey, Michael, you're a little bit of a distraction. Would you mind waiting out in the hall until practice is over?" And Jordan and his wife were incredibly gracious
Yes.
people. And he said, "Sure, coach. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt." And he went out in the hall. And my brother thought later, "Gee, I'm probably the only coach in the history of basketball that ever kicked Michael Jordan out of practice." So
There is a certain irony there. Yeah,
there
yeah.
is.
The stories of Michael Jordan are endless, even to this day. I mean, he
Yeah.
plays 36 holes and still goes play, it's just
In the
absolutely.
Olympics, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
the
Yeah.
Olympics, yeah, yeah, Barkley tells these stories and, NBA, and then what's happening in the WNBA is incredible now too with Caitlin Clark and just the popularity and, it's a great time for basketball.
Yeah, it really is. And I am so glad. I used to try to get the girls I coached, enthusiastic about watching the WNBA and stuff like that. And it just was,
Right,
it
the
was boring.
stars.
They
Yeah,
didn't care. They didn't want to watch it. And now I think, Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark, all that group of, sort of young blood that's come in, that it's fun to watch them. They enjoy the game, and that's, I mean, you hear the NBA players, yeah,
mhm,
we play 82 games. We don't really get going until the playoffs start.
right.
Okay. But I'm going to be charged $300 to watch you play
Yeah,
on a night
yeah,
that,
yeah.
it's like, yeah, maybe I don't feel like it. So,
Unfortunate, because in soccer, the women's program has always been so good.
yeah,
They won so many World Cups. So when I was coaching the girls, we would have watches, and they'd come over, we'd watch the women's team, and, it's very different then. Well, still, it is, but it's important for the people to have these role models, the girls and the boys like that. Yeah.
yeah. I used to get my basketball team to watch the girls soccer,
Wow.
yeah, I was like, you know what? Watch these.
Yeah.
These are champions.
Yeah, and of course, I'm from Connecticut. So, UConn, Gino Auriemmo, I heard you quote
Love
him
Gino.
many times. Yeah, yeah, great coach, and of course, the men's team won 2. I don't need to remind you, won 2
No,
back to
no,
back.
Hurley.
Yeah,
Yeah, Hurley's back to back, and
really,
yeah.
yeah.
So our daughter played, AAU basketball, and her team got invited to the Nike Invitational in Chicago. And this whole thing blew my mind. They rented out McCormick Place, basically the convention center, and they had 62 full court basketball courts
Wow.
inside this thing. And I remember, I went with my daughter, and we were there and we were watching, and I'm like, okay, I'm hungry. I'm gonna get something to eat. And I go up, I get something, the hamburger, I sit down and I look up, and right across from me is Gino Auriemma, coach of Connecticut, and Muffet McGraw, the coach of Notre Dame. And I'm like, man, this doesn't get any better than this. I mean, I
Yeah,
get to eat lunch with it's just
elite.
yeah, I mean the best of the best in that. So, and it's nice to see the parity, especially in women's college basketball now. It
Yeah,
used to be Connecticut and
right.
Tennessee, and yeah,
Yeah, very, very. I mean, there's so many now, right?
yeah,
SMU and, oh my goodness, LSU, and yeah, it is the parity is
South
happening.
Carolina, yeah,
South Carolina, of course, yeah. So I started my business in the '90s, Terry, and I was not paying attention to myself at all. I was eating poorly. I was working 14, 16-hour days, and not sleeping well, not eating well. I stopped exercising. Tennis and soccer, they all kind of went behind. And I'm at the doctor's office. I got myself up to 340 pounds, and so the doctor said to me, if I don't lose the weight, not going to see my daughter graduate. She was just born. So it really just punched me right in the stomach. I said, what have I done to myself? Spent the next 6, 7 months, lost 130 pounds, kept it off. You can't look at it as a finishing line, right? When we get to
right.
some of these goals, you got to make permanent changes. But people want the quick answer. What's your secret? And of course, there's no secret, right? The answer is discipline. That's how I got focused. I got a routine. I got determination. I wonder how discipline plays a role in your life, Terry Tucker.
Yeah, I named my company Motivational Check, because motivation is a big word right now. Everybody's motivated,
Mm.
but I always tell people motivation's not enough. I always try to describe it as a sort of three-legged stool, and you need three things.
Hmm.
One is motivation, which has got to come from yourself. Two is what you just said. You need to be disciplined.
Hmm.
And three, you need to have good habits. And
Hmm.
if any one of those is missing, it's incredibly hard to be successful. If you're highly motivated and you're disciplined, but you have terrible habits, I'm eating, I've got terrible habits, and I'm putting on all this weight. But if I got great habits and I'm motivated, but I'm not disciplined to implement that, you're still not going to be successful. So you
Mm.
almost need, I think, all three of those in your life. And I mean, you could probably speak to that better than I can. You were disciplined, but I'm going to imagine you changed your habits to get better habits, and then you were motivated to implement those habits, and that's how you lost all that weight.
So your background playing sports, team sports as a child, and with your brothers in the house. I mean, was discipline kind of, was it focused on by your parents or was it just kind of assumed?
Oh my God, it was. I mean, we were brought up, you are seen but not heard. Do not talk to
Mm,
anybody. Do not, you're upstairs when the adults come in. We had to answer every adult. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. No, ma'am. No, sir.
wow.
And my dad was 6'5", 250 pounds. And he was a very loving man. He was my hero. But I always sort of described my dad as Fonzie from Happy Days.
Ah.
You were like, if he ever hit you, you knew he would kill you, but he
Ooh,
never hit us,
yeah.
so it was just sort of but they expected us to be incredibly disciplined. You got homework, take care of it. The grass needs to be cut, get it done. Oh, wait a minute, I got basketball practice. Well, then you better figure out how you're going to cut the grass. So,
Mm,
I mean, John Wooden used to have a quote about one of the worst things you can do for somebody is something they could and should do for themselves. And I
mm,
think that's where people
mm.
today, I don't want somebody else to tell me or show me or do for me. No, you do it. Get it, figure it out. I mean, that's how you grow. It's how you develop. So discipline, incredibly important. We were raised that way, both me and my brothers, to just be very disciplined, very polite, care about other people, serve other people.
Terry, when I get so many different responses with discipline. It's amazing how I just talked to somebody and they said, "Well, I've been an enemy of discipline. I'm not. I don't want. I don't want." They have this kind of militant attitude. You're forced to do things, and there's others think, "Well, it's just self discipline." Like you said, the quote from John Wooden, "This is something I should be doing. I should be monitoring my health. I should be doing these things." It's fascinating to me the different answers I get, and to have it as part of kind of motivation. You say discipline and good habits. It's an excellent pairing. What motivates you, Terry?
I guess my faith, I mean, I'm in, like I said, I'm in a wheelchair. I don't have a left leg. I still have tumors in my lungs. I still battle this disease every day. And a lot of times I'm like, come on, God, give me a break here and stuff
Mm,
like that.
mm,
But I sort of think back to, people are like, well, why do you think you got cancer? It's like, well, why shouldn't I get cancer? What makes
mm,
me any more special than the next person
mm,
to get cancer? But at the same time, can God use my weaknesses as a cancer patient, as somebody who's disabled, to show His glory, to show His love, and things like that? So I kind of feel I'm an instrument of
mm.
what God wants, and that's really, that and my family and my friends. Those three things really keep me going. Those are the most important things in my life: faith, family, and friends.
Faith, family, and friends. Yeah, your three F's.
The three F's.
So, given that motivation, Terry, how do you measure success?
I'll give you, and I'm going to go back to John Wooden again. The best
Mm,
definition of success I've ever heard in my life came from John Wooden. And think about Wooden as, at the time, the most successful college basketball coach of all times. And this is how Wooden defines success. And that's how I define success. Success is peace of mind, which is a direct result of self satisfaction in knowing that you did the best to become the best that you're capable of becoming.
mm,
Before Wooden was a basketball coach, he was an English teacher in high school. And he used to use that to determine whether his kids were successful. If you worked your butt off and got a C in his English class, he would say you were successful.
mm.
But if you didn't work very hard and you still got an A, he would probably say you weren't very successful. So it's more of, did I do everything I could to become the best person I could be? That's my definition of success.
I'd rather have a hard C than an easy A.
There you go.
It's interesting. The lessons that we can learn from John Wooden like that. And I have heard that definition of success. And of course, there's no wrong answer, right,
Yeah,
Terry? I mean,
exactly.
yeah, because it can change.
Yeah, and I think it's success is kind of like, people, I write the book Sustainable Excellence. Well, what is excellence? And my response is, I don't know. Like, what do
Mm,
you mean you don't know? You wrote the book. I said, well, I look at excellence the same way I look at beauty. I mean, Joe, you and I may look at a sports team or, a piece of music or something, and you're like, man, I think that's excellent. And I may
mm.
say, yeah, I think it's good, but I don't think it's excellent. So I think excellence, success, beauty, sort of in the eye of the beholder. You have to determine what that is for yourself. Nobody else can do it for you.
Subjective. It certainly is. Terry, it's a great. I mean, I've been following. I'm so glad we set this up. Your motivation, and it makes me happy to know there's people on this earth like yourself, Terry. I mean, you could have just as easily just sat there and took this in, and but you turned it around, and you're showing others. You're writing books. You're speaking. You're coming on podcasts. You're sharing your story. You're an absolute inspiration. I wish you continued success. I can't wait when I'm in the general Colorado area next time we can get a cup of tea.
I'd love that, Joey. I think that would be great. And I really appreciate this time, and thanks for having me on your show.
Anybody listening, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I have a blog slash website called Motivational Check. Every day I put up a thought for the day, and with that thought usually comes a question about how maybe you could apply it into your life. But you can leave me a message there at motivationalcheck.com.
And you're on LinkedIn, you're on Twitter, you're on Instagram, you're on Facebook, you got
All the goodies.
YouTube, you got, of course, we'll put a link up for your book on Amazon. Terry, thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to having that cup of tea with you.
I look forward to it, Joey. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pin's Discipline Conversations.